The Barrberry is a combined design effort between myself and good friend Barry Stokes. Designed to imitate staging Chironomid pupa early in their emergence process, the Barrberry offers an uncomplicated, toned-down approach that works well when fish seem to be avoiding more overt, flashy patterns. Here is a listing of what you'll need to tie the Barrberry. So let's tie you a Barrberry. Into the jaws of my Regal, I've placed a Daiichi 1120 curved scud pupa hook in size 12. I tie these 10s through 16s, with 12 and 14 being used most often. Onto the hook, I slid a 3/32 black bead. For 12s and 14s, I'd use 3/32. For 10s, I'd use a 7/64. Narrow in towards the hook eye so I don't accidentally obscure the hook eye if I had the wide end that might overlap the eye a little bit. I'm going to pull that out of the way. I'm going to attach some MFC gray tying thread in 8/0 or 6/0, whatever you like. This happens to be the 8/0. And for the gills, we're going to use some of the UV2 sparkle yarn, obviously in white to mimic the natural gills of the pupa. I like this material because it's quite vibrant in the water. It's got those fluorescent properties to it. And it also, from a tying perspective, compresses wonderfully. Even on a number 12, I don't have to thin it out because the thread pressure will squash this down. So I put a single strand with the majority of it pointing out over the hook eye, and I'm going to wind it back just in front of the hook point to help build up some of my body taper, and then trim that little residue off. And then I'll just carry on down the shank, covering it entirely, and you can see I've started a bit of a body taper there. We'll cover some of those errant strands up in a bit, and then quickly advance the tying thread back up. I could place 1 or 2 wraps underneath the gills to caulk them up a little bit, and then we're simply going to whip finish. And as I've said on many of my previous videos, you can do this step on a number of hooks and sort of pre-gill a number of hooks, and it just speeds up the tying process at the vise if you're tying multiples. We're just tying one today, so we'll kind of do everything deliberately. And then we're just going to take the bead, slide it forward, up over those remnants, and then reattach our tying thread directly behind the bead. And then we're going to walk that thread right down to the bend of the hook. And you'll notice I'm lifting up on the tag end here, and the thread for my bobbin will strike this angle here and slide right down. And it's a neat way of ensuring that you get all your wraps one right next door to each other. Nice adjacent, close touching wraps. And then we'll work our way down a little bit, and now we can trim away that excess, and we'll carry the thread down into the bend. I like to go down into the bend so the thread coming off the hook is about a 45-degree angle to the hook point, just like that. And then we'll quickly advance the tying thread up behind the bead where we'll tie in our ribbing material. And for the ribbing material, we're going to use Flashaboo, cranberry color, hence the name Barrberry. It was my good friend Barry Stokes and I, after observing Chironomid pupa from some throat samples, were inflated but not super inflated. We were fishing deep water. They hadn't had a chance to get all silver and vibrant like my chromie. So this was a more subtle, and the trout really seemed to respond. We thought some of the brighter patterns we were using on that day were just a little too bright. So this is kind of a subtle chromie, if you will, or a gunmetal chromie, or a Guns N' Roses. So we're just going to go up and down the hook shank with the tying thread. And again, we can spin that bobbin counterclockwise to take any twist we're putting out, and that'll help flatten our wraps, and we'll just get better coverage. We're going to go right down, and we're kind of a bit going old school here, using a thread body pupa. They still work very well today in today's synthetic mad world, which I'm a proud partner of. Thread body pupas still have a place. And we'll go right the way back up behind the bead and have a quick look, and we've got a nice gray body there. What we're going to do now is we're actually going to change our tying thread out. So we're just going to whip finish that gray a couple of times. trim it away. And then we're going to reattach with some rusty brown 8.0 from MFC. And this rusty brown suggests the gill pad coloration of many Chironomid pupa. And now we're just going to wind our ribbing forward. So we're going to place one complete wrap at the base, gives it a little bit of a maroon butt to suggest residual hemoglobin. We'll just get that started, a couple of wraps, and then open ribbing. We're trying for ideally 7 ribs, 9 body segments. It's 4, 5, 6, 7, but don't get hung up on that. Just get into a natural rhythm. Don't worry, I'm quite sure fish can't count, and if they can see that many and count that many ribs, please explain why they don't see that big pointy hook hanging below. So thankfully they don't. So there we've got the body ribbed, and now all that's left to do is build up a nice, gently sloping thread thorax that extends no further back than the length of the bead. So that's sort of, build it up slowly. Don't be too aggressively, don't try to build your thread thorax in an aggressive steep slope, because when you go to whip finish, when you go to tighten, all the thread wraps will sort of tumble and your thread thorax will unravel a little bit. So we'll just place 3 or 4 wraps right at the back of that bead, whip finish, and the tying portion of the Barrberry is done. So you can see it's a pretty simple fly. You can rattle out a number of these. So we'll trim our gills. So we'll come in, and using the bead length again as our proportions, that's how we'll trim the bead. A few errant strands there, we'll trim those away. Fish can't see those. And all it's left to do is give this its final body coating. So we're going to use some UV clear fly finish in the flow formulation. So it's got a brush applicator, so I'm going to brush off and get just a little bit on there. And just brush this right on. And sweep it around. The beauty of these UV cure products is they don't cure until you cure them. So there's no drying time issue. So I can rotate I'm just going to spin this around a little bit. So we've got a situation here where the UV resin is kind of, uneven. So I'm just going to take my dubbing needle here, or bodkin, and just, again, help work that along. And I like to sweep it forward. And you can do a couple of applications if you want. So we've got one here. Gravity's taking over, so I'll sweep that up out of the way and come in with the UV light and give it a quick stab of light. And I don't know if the camera shows, but those white gills really pop. There we go, and I'm probably going to give it another brief coating just to even it out. Probably being fussy here. Again, it's a simple fly to tie, so don't get too worried, because you got to remember that UV resin, once it gets in the water, is invisible. So it just gives a little bit of shine to the fly. So there you have it, the finished Barrberry, a simple thread-bodied pupa that just works. For more information on fly fishing, and stillwater fly fishing in particular, please visit my website at flycraftangling.com. Here you will find fishing tips, fly patterns, articles, information regarding my seminars and schools, along with links to my blog and mine and Brian Chan's online stillwater fly fishing store. You can also visit our store directly at stillwaterflyfishingstore.com. While you're visiting my site, please join my mailing list to receive my educational newsletters. You can also follow me through my social media channels. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already, and give this video a like. Please take the time to watch my other videos as well. Thanks for watching.